Hi, and welcome to Busy Busy You. Today's webinar will be focused on learning Busy Busy in 20 minutes. We're going to cover quite a bit of information and quite a bit of the app today. However, we won't cover everything. We will give you what you need as far as the essentials and also the features that are going to provide the biggest bang for your buck. We'll keep you on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you have questions, we would love to hear those questions. Go ahead and ask those questions in the GoToWebinar control panel in the question section. We will have somebody moderating those questions on our end, and we'll ask those questions at the end, or my colleague David, who is moderating the questions, will answer those as we go. Let's go ahead and jump in, and you'll see my phone is pulled up here on the screen. We'll jump in on the mobile and we'll show you how to clock in. Clocking in and out is really straightforward. It works on Android and on iOS. It also works offline. So if your field employees get in an area where there's poor service, their time will still be tracked. And once they get back to an area with good service, their time will sync up. So let's go ahead and hit the clock in button. And here are some steps that we recommend adding or at least requiring on your clock-ins from your employees. First, we recommend to always require a project. Even if you have a lot of projects for customers, you still need to assign time to something. You've got to know what projects employees are working on. If you're a service-oriented organization, then have broad categories your employees can clock into. You can also create an office project in case office personnel need a project to clock into. Most recent projects, when I click into this into the project section, the most recent projects, they bubble up to the top. This is just a time saver for your employees when they're clocking in, so they don't have to hunt for that project that they were on yesterday. The final thing to point out here on the project screen, actually, you'll also notice that the nearby projects, they also bubble up near the top, and again, a time saver, and that's based on the GPS location of the employee's phone. The final thing I want to point out here on the project screen is on Android the sub projects. So on Android, these sub projects are identified with a gray folder. And on iOS, it's an arrow button to the right of the project. So if I click into one of these projects, I'm going to get a drop down of all of the sub projects on this project, and they can be change orders, they can be phases of the project, they can be whatever you need them to be. It gives you a way to isolate phases of a project, and it gives you flexibility around reporting. So then once we click into a project, press into a project, you'll notice if you have, so cost codes are a great way here to I guess, gather more information and get more detailed information from the field on how time is being spent. These can be customized to match how you do job costing, and you can also use the CSI CSI master format. If you have cost codes enabled, your employees are going to automatically be prompted to select a cost code once they pick a project. But if you have project-specific cost codes, the prompt will be automatic. So I guess it's the other way around. So if they're just enabled, they'll be able to pick them. They're not required to. But if they're project-specific, just like they are here, when I pick a project, it's going to automatically prompt them to pick a cost code. So it makes getting that information a lot easier. So we'll go ahead and pick clear and grub here. And then we can pick a piece of equipment. The equipment section is for any company that has equipment that needs to either be tracked by the hour or billed by the hour. Adding heavy equipment, that is. So adding a piece of equipment in Busy Busy does two things for you. First, it allows you to track productive hours spent on a piece of equipment. And second, it allows you to see the location of where the piece of equipment was used. Let's go ahead and pick Big Bertha here. There we go. And one thing I want to point out here is on this screen, now that we're back on this screen, these top three fields here, project, cost code, and equipment, they're all smart data fields, and they will allow you to analyze information over time and across projects. So keep that in mind. These are data points that you can reference over and over again or in reporting. The description field, however, is a free form field needing input from a human. It doesn't have a standard list to pick from. However, it's another prime place to get a better sense of what's going on in the field. We have a number of customers that actually use this for a variety of creative ways, or in a variety of creative ways, from entering in numbers to track material, to detailed messages. Your employees can use the voice to text on this, and it'll make it easier to get that information in the description. I would add it, but this screen share takes over my voice to text field. And I'm not going to make you watch me fat finger a message, but I'll just do here's a note. See, I already screwed up. Note, and now we've got a description in there. So next, let's go ahead and hit the save button to get us clocked in. Just to be clear, employees don't have to put a description in when they're first clocking in. They can add a description throughout the day, and they can add to it throughout the day. But they can also add a description before they clock out or at any other time. We get a lot of questions about the GPS, and I actually expanded it. It looks like my GPS didn't get pulled. But when an employee, so just to clarify on the GPS, busybusy only pulls the location when employees push buttons in the app. So clocking in, going on break, switching projects or cost codes, and clocking out. We don't track employees constantly, and you can let employees know. There's been kind of an ongoing debate. We've decided there's a happy medium of just pulling those locations when they push buttons. Now that we're clocked in, we can go on break. Pressing the break button pauses the clock. So I'll point that out. So we have our go on break button here. That pauses the clock, and it lets the employee know. So it pauses the clock and then provides a break clock, and that break clock lets them know how long they've been on break. This is not a paid break, which excludes it from the employee's time. You simply end the break by hitting end break. Actually, let me go ahead and hit the break button. So there's the break clock, and it paused our clock out in our regular clock. So once I hit end break, that's going to end the break and start the clock again. A couple of things to point out on this screen while we're looking at it. This top clock. So you see there are two clocks here. The top clock, with the larger font, is the current time entry, and it corresponds with the time entry at the bottom of the screen there. While the smaller font clock there is the total time for the day, and it will continue to aggregate this time throughout the day. Another feature that's it's not required for tracking time, but our clients absolutely love it, and that's the camera button up at the top right. When your employees are clocked in on a project, busybusy automatically organizes those photos by the project. And then finally, clocking out at the end of the day. We have some optional prompts when you hit the clock out button. And this is a fairly new feature. We call it daily sign off. It's a great feature and was a result of a lot of requests, which brings up the point. If you do have requests, or if you have a feature request or suggestions, we absolutely love to hear those. And the more people vote for and request a feature, the more likely it is to get done, and also the quicker it gets built, and it'll move up in our roadmap. So our daily sign off was a product of that process. The two pieces here: were you injured? Safety sign off, and then also a correct time sign off. This is a great way to build a culture of safety and accuracy in your company, and it'll give your employees the right mindset. It can also help with insurance claims to have a digital trail documenting that the employees left the job site in good health, and protects the employer from false workers' comp claims. Let me go ahead and finish these. I was not injured, and yes, my time is correct. So now I'm clocked out. Let's cover the buttons at the bottom of the screen here, and I apologize, we're going really quickly here. And if you want to watch this again, we are recording this, and you'll receive a recorded version of this in a day or two. But we have a lot to cover, and just want to make sure that we're hitting on all of these key or essential elements that are going to help you guys be successful. So right now we're on the clock, or the dashboard on the clock. And we'll just kind of walk through the buttons along the bottom. That first button is the time clock, or the time card, and the time card is a place where your employees can view and review their time cards and sign them at the end of the pay period. The next button is the schedule, and let me see if I've got any work scheduled. I don't have any work scheduled right now, but if I did, it would show up here. Employees can see their work that's scheduled and can see where they'll be working tomorrow or the rest of the week. You can schedule out up to a year. The next piece here is reports, and the reports are extremely powerful. They provide information on what projects and cost codes employees have been working on, or where they've been spending their time. And you can see it from a manager's perspective on the mobile device. I can see all of my employees. I can see the number of hours for the month, and I can manipulate these are those key data points that we're grabbing right from the clock in. And so I can see this information by cost code and by employee, and it's really, really powerful. So let's step real quick into a supervisor's shoes and see how they might manage employees' time on a project. And if we go into the employee section here in our menu, you'll see I can see all of my employees, who's clocked in and who's not. From here, some key things for supervisors that we think will help you get manage time and manage your employees. If you hit the three dots up at the top right, that provides a drop down, and we're gonna highlight a few in here, a few things in here that they're the ones that you'll most likely use daily or often. First, the clock in right there. Clock in, clock out. Those are pretty straightforward. That's going to clock an employee in real time. And also, just to be clear, you can clock a single employee in at one time, or you can clock a whole crew or the entire company in at once. But this is a quick way for a supervisor to interact with a single employee or multiple employees. The next thing I want to point out is the new time entry. And this new time entry is a place where the supervisor can go in and create a new time entry from scratch. That's if the guy left his phone at home or forgot his phone. At the end of the day, the supervisor can go ahead and create a new time entry. The last two here, let me move this, are the clock in and clock out, and these are probably some of the most useful. If an employee forgets to clock in or clock out, these clock in and clock out options allow a supervisor to clock someone in or clock someone out in the past. Hopefully that makes sense. Now let's go ahead and transition to the web. So we'll go ahead and shrink this and get rid of this. Okay, so the dashboard, it's pretty much the same as on mobile. It's really similar. It's almost analogous with it. Let's go to the employees section here, where we can perform many bulk actions. One question we get a lot is on archiving or deleting an employee. We don't delete anything in the app. It's all archived and can be unarchived as well. So there are two ways to archive an employee, and this is the case for projects and for cost codes. You can archive those pieces or those things in the same way. So the first way is if you click the three dots to the right of an employee, we can perform again some of the bulk actions that we had on the mobile, but we can also archive an employee here too. And then if we want to archive employees in bulk, we can click on the three dots up at the top right and click on archive there. And then from here, we can select the employees that we want to archive. And this is a great way. This is how you'll want to do it when you have employees that are let go or have quit, and even seasonal employees. You'll want to come in and archive them, because the way that the billing works, if an employee gets in and uses the app, 2 or 3 months down the road, that'll add to your overall head count in the app. So just keep that in mind. As soon as the pay period's out, you'll want to go ahead and archive that employee so that you don't run the risk of getting charged an extra license for the month. So within an employee profile, we'll pick on David down here. Oops. Actually, I need to cancel this. I'm not gonna archive David. So let's go ahead and click into David's profile. And so here's a great place also where you can interact with the time of an individual employee. We can review his time cards, time off, and details and wage. One quick note about time cards here in an individual employee. It's a great place to look at it and review it. If you have to review time for a lot of employees, or even just 3 or 4 employees, the quickest way to do that is in reports, and I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. There are a lot of clicks and a lot of back and forth here in the time card section. But let's go into the details here. And if we need to edit details, this is where, for an employee, this is where we'll do it. We can hit edit details, and that allows us to edit any of these details. And then at the bottom, if an employee ever loses their username or their password, this is the place where you can grab that username or reset that password. A relatively new feature, one that was I guess a part of another request that we got quite a bit is the GPS requirements, or the required GPS. So on at the employee level, on any given employee, you can require a GPS in order for them to clock in. You can make it not required, or you can turn it off. And if you turn it off, there's no map, there's nothing at all for that indicates that the GPS is grabbing their location, and it's not. At that point, it's not grabbing their location at all. So so we can we'll go ahead and hit save on that, and so if you have any questions about working in an employee's profile, go ahead and post that question there, and then we can also talk about wages at some point as well. But we'll actually, because we're short on time, we'll go ahead and jump over to projects, and we'll go ahead and click into a project here, the Adobe Campus Expansion project, and we'll just point out a couple of things here on the projects page. The sub projects, it's a really valuable tool for that offers flexibility in reporting on your projects. This provides a way to break up your projects into smaller chunks, and it allows you to report on the overall project, but it also allows you to isolate sub projects and the information on those sub projects, the time data and equipment data. So I guess a couple of examples how that might be used, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. The sub projects can be used to phase a project out, or phase a project. It can also be used for like lots in a subdivision. If you do repeat business for a client, you can have the client a top line project, and then each of their projects a sub project, and that allows you to pull reports on that client, and then also on their individual projects as well. And it can also be they can also correspond with draws or pay requisitions. The next piece here, labor budgets. Labor budgets is a feature in busybusy that's great for project managers and those that are interested in the health of an ongoing project. By virtue of employees clocking in, you'll see how much of the labor budget they've used up on a given project, and this is in real time. The next piece here, reports. These are project specific reports and provide insight into budgets and actuals, timesheets, and employee breakdowns on hours, and then sub projects, of course. The photos, those photos that your employees are taking and that are being organized by project. If we go into a project or into a sub project for that matter, those photos are going to be organized within the project, and then again at the sub project level, those photos will show up there. The cost codes. This is a new feature. The project-specific cost codes. If you have just a handful of cost codes on a given project, this is a great way for you to help your employees know which cost codes to pick and which cost codes they're going to be using on that project, rather than having a big long list of projects. The project-specific cost codes. So just to show you real quick how to use that, we're going to hit the Manage button here. And you'll see here we have a master list of projects, of cost codes. And if we go to the ungrouped here, we can pick as many or as few of these cost codes as we want to be on our project. And let's do tile set here, and then you'll see that show up here in our cost code list. Employees won't be able to pick cost codes outside of this list for that project, so helps keep it tight and keep your cost codes accurate. In the details, a couple of things to point out here. You can set the geolocation for a project and also enable reminders based on that location. You'll see we have our pin dropped here just off the Veterans Memorial at I-15. And then the circle, that blue circle indicates the geofence. And when employees cross that geofence, it's gonna remind them to clock in and clock out. You can move this pin around. You can also adjust the size of that circle so that it takes in the project, the project and whatever you need to cover in order to make those notifications work correctly. I would recommend just a couple of tips for doing this. Turn on the satellite view. It allows you to see the actual buildings, and you can take in the building, take the whole building in or the whole project in. And then also, if we understand that if that you might be on projects that are new and that don't have an address yet, a good way to place the pin in the correct location is to find an address that's close by, enter it into the map here, and this is Google. You can see that, and then drag that pin over to the project, and that'll give you an accurate location, and then you can adjust that circle. But if you enable, just remember to enable that satellite view and make the circle big enough. I've had guys out in the field get frustrated because their projects weren't covered completely, and they'd walk in and out of that circle, and it'd remind them all day to clock out. So just remember. And a tip for power users, in the employee section, so the employee section, the project section, and the cost code section. Let me back out here to the employees or the project section. A tip for all of you power users: when you're adding a project, you'll notice up here at the top imports or an import. If you click into that and download this sample file, it's going to give you a template that you can use for importing projects all at once. So that'll pull up here in just a second. It would take forever to pull up a spreadsheet right now. Anyway, you can pull that up on each of those in the app, and that makes adding a bunch of employees or a bunch of projects all at once really easy. We'll save the equipment section for later. The cost code section, it's pretty straightforward. There are only two required fields: the cost code itself, and then also the description. A great for those companies that are bilingual. You can add, either in parentheses or make the description the Spanish, or make the cost code section the English, or whatever language. I don't want to identify or I guess exclude any, but whatever language you speak. I speak Russian and English, so Russian would be fun. So now for the most important or valuable part of busy, especially for office personnel. We're real close to being done, so bear with me. We might go over just a few minutes, but this is probably one of the more important parts of this, and gives you a lot of benefit. So it's the reporting. So we'll go into the reporting. And just to orient you here in the reports, busybusy was founded around operational needs. and understanding project profitability, but that doesn't mean we don't make the payroll department happy. We serve up the same data to the project manager and the payroll department in a way that works for them. It literally is the same data. And reports, so the reports on the right side here, those are for your project controls. They're high-level reporting for project profitability and also for project management. And then the reports on the left-hand side, those are for payroll and managing payroll. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of the labor reports, and we'll go into project activity report here. And you'll see for the week we have 240 hours of time, and then the time entries will show up here at the bottom in just a second. And just to show off the power of the reporting here, let's go ahead and show you well, you can see the hours down here that are distributed across the projects. But we can also see the hours broken down with additional information like overtime. So if we click on the three columns up here, the 3-column button up here, we can include more information. So if I want to look at regular hours, overtime, I can look at total costs, and I can look at any of these in this list here, and that gives us our information for each project. So I can see California Street has 145 hours with $3,000 total cost. We can also see these hours distributed by employee, or by cost code, or by equipment. Let me pull that drop down again, or by date. I really like, and I think it demonstrates the power of the app really well. I like to go into a project, and once that loads again, we'll take a look at a particular project. And if we're using the cost codes diligently, and we're keeping track of those cost codes, when we go into a project, we can see those hours and see the story of the project. So if we go in by cost code, look at it by cost code here, you can see if I look at this project for the the duration of the project, or for last week, last month, I can see the hours and total costs associated with each of these cost codes. It's really powerful. And just remember, this is information that you're gathering by virtue of your employees just clocking in and going through that 10-second process of picking a project, clicking on a cost code and a piece of equipment, and you get all of this really rich information. Let's go ahead and jump over to those can be pulled by a custom date range, by the way. So it doesn't have to be daily, weekly, monthly, or just by a pay period. You can do a custom date range there as well. So they can be exported and printed, which once you get into a spreadsheet, you can do a lot with that information. And then in the report section, back in the report section here, we'll take a look at there are two reports in the payroll section that I think are really valuable. The employee payroll report, I won't click into that. Probably the most important for payroll is this time card report. And I mentioned that the best place to review employees' time and review and make edits to employees' time is here in the time card report. Once that loads, you'll see that the layout there. But while that loads, I'll explain it. You can export these. You can sort these by I think ascending and descending, and then you can also print these out. And when they print, they do print by employee, so it's not like the time cards run together. It does separate the employees' time cards. But if I need to edit a time entry here, I can click into a time entry and edit that time. If I click on a date, I can put in a date here. So let's do this for for October 31st and hit OK. And then let's see, actually the time here. So if we click on the hour, I can put in 12. I can just key it in. You don't have to use this wheel. I know that's kind of a slow way to do it, but if you key it in, it's a quick and easy way to do it. So I'll hit OK, and then of course you can add a break and add any of the information associated with that time entry. And also, if I want to delete it, I can also just delete it. So we'll delete that. Just say Andrew screwed it up, and he's not going to get paid for that time. I'm just kidding. We'll add it back later. So again, any questions around the reports? I'd love to get those. And by no means does this have to be the only venue or forum for asking questions. If you have questions or if you need any help, I'm gonna show you again down here at the bottom in the web, and it's the same place on the mobile. If you hit that chat right there, you can get online and chat with one of our representatives. They probably average getting back to you in 3 minutes or less. They're pretty fantastic, and I don't know when they sleep, but they are pretty diligent. So keep that in mind. And then also, if you want to suggest features, this is where you'll suggest those features. Here, it'll take you to our feature request page. So let's wrap things up real quick with company settings. I know we've already gone over a little bit here, but these are important pieces here, and then we can answer questions. So the company settings. This is where your profile. We'll skip that. You guys know where you work and you know your company's name. The timekeeping. This is the more important and critical stuff. The general here, this is where you set the settings for your employees when they clock in. Time card approval, that's the allowing signatures for time cards. A fairly new feature, we've enabled supervisor signatures, and that allows you to have 2 signatures on a time card, and that way when you get it for payroll, that you know it's had a second set of eyes on it. And then that daily sign off that we mentioned or that we showed you earlier, that's where you'll enable this, and you can also customize these instructions and the daily time card disclaimers to match whatever you guys need it to match. The overtime pay period, you guys probably already know when you're doing overtime, you can customize the overtime. It can be anything over 8, and then anything is time and a half, and then anything over 40 is time and a half. California has its own special setting. Everybody else has to customize it or pick the standard, which is anything over 40 hours is time and a half. The default entry times, that's a place where you can set the defaults. So when you're creating new time entries or scheduling, it gives you a great way to it gives you a great way to save some time and not to have to adjust these times constantly when you're creating those. And then the rounding time, this allows you to have nice even numbers, and you can round it to the nearest 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You can round it employee favorable or round up or down, kind of whatever you decide. And then integrations, we do have 2 integrations, QuickBooks and Procore for now. If you have questions about that, let us know, and we'd be happy to help you. The subscription page. This is a really this is an important piece here. You can view the history of your subscriptions here. So the way the annual or the prepaid billing works, you'll see each month the number of credits you've used up based on the number of users you've logged into the app. It shows a dollar amount. It's not charging you. because you've prepaid. It's just showing you the dollar amount that's coming out in terms of credits. So keep that in mind when you see those statements. And then finally, the positions. The positions allows flexibility and control over who can see what and do what in the app. For example, scheduling is limited to those who can edit someone's time. So that's right here. So if you can edit time here, then you can schedule time for employees. So let's wrap up. Thank you very much for your time today. Let me click out of that. And this is a time where we answer questions. I really appreciate you coming. So first question we have is Adam asks, is there an easier way to see the location for where my employees have clocked in? That is a really good question. So on the web, and this is the same on mobile. Actually, it might be a little easier on mobile, but on the web, if we go into the employee section and click on the three-dot button up at the top right, and then click on View Location, it's going to show everybody who has clocked in with their GPS. We can select those employees, and once we hit Submit, we can see where they've clocked in on a map. So that's probably not as interesting unless I zoom out. So we can see where those employees are in the city on the map. We can see where they've clocked in, where they've clocked out, and their breaks as well. So really good question. Thank you. Next question comes from Debbie. Sub-project, I'm having to enter these on each project. Is there a way of setting them up like a cost code or such so that they are handy? That is a really good question. Thank you, Debbie. So one of the I want to I guess preface this by saying that we've built quite a bit of flexibility into the app. We're not trying to make people do things a certain way, and so one of the things that we've seen, and we've seen some of our clients get creative, but one of the things that we've seen people do is create a template project. So let's pretend this Brio project is a template project, and you call it template, and it has all of your sub projects under it here. So it could be here we've got on-site, per diem, and travel. It could be the phases of your project. And then if we go back out to the main project page and we click on the three dots to the right of Brio or to the right of our template project, you can see I can duplicate that. I can rename it, and now I've spun up a new project with all of those sub projects that are, in a way they're like cost codes or phase codes, and you didn't have to recreate those every time you create a new project. Thank you. Hopefully that helps. And then Carl, let's see. Carl asks, how would you handle prevailing wages? That's a really good question. So prevailing wages is a somewhat of a complicated topic because it is by county and by trade. The way that we suggest handling prevailing wages in the app is you identify the cost codes that correspond with those prevailing wages or those specific trades, and then when we do an export into a CSV, and we can help run or create a macro or a custom report that will apply those prevailing wages based on these cost codes. So it happens after it gets out of busybusy. You would leave the employee's wage blank, so that we can address that in a spreadsheet, in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, and then it makes it's a pretty easy process once we know which rates apply to a particular trade. Thank you, Carl. Michelle asks, do you guys have a way to have more than one supervisor sign a time card? That's a request that we've received lately, and after releasing that supervisor, so initially it was, hey, it's great that an employee can sign a time card, but how can we have a supervisor sign a time card? And like, okay, well, we'll give you that. so we released it, and once we released it, now we're getting requests of having a second supervisor sign those. On the actual mobile device, there is not a way to have a supervisor sign a signature, or a second supervisor sign. If you were to print them out, I know that sounds terrible, but you could have them sign it, or you could do a PDF and have the supervisor sign it as well. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you than that. Again, if you want that feature, and like I said, we've gotten that request quite a bit, go to the support section, hit that suggest features button, and request that feature, and or look for it. And if it's already been entered, you can actually vote for it. And the more people vote for it, the more our developers pay attention to it. Abby is asking on using a project template. When you duplicate it to create a new project, can you do just one geolocation that would cover all of the sub-projects? So the way that the geolocation works, if you create so we're looking at our projects list. So if we go into the Adobe Campus expansion project here and look at the geolocation, we've got the geolocation set up for this whole project. So if it's like an apartment complex and it has multiple buildings, you can expand this project, or this top line project, to cover all of those buildings, and then at the sub project level, you would just leave the sub project. Let me click into a sub project. You would leave that. So we're looking at brick here. You would leave that blank, or you wouldn't turn that on for that sub project, and then that would cover all of the sub projects as well. The way that it works, picking a project or a sub project on the mobile, when you're out in the field and your employees are picking a project, if they press a project on the mobile device, and maybe I can pull this up again. Let's see, I think it kicked me out of the, nope, there, let's share it. So the way that it works when an employee clocks in on a project, it automatically prompts them. So if we click project, and then we go down to, let's say, this Brio project, it's going to expand that, and they can't pick the Brio project. They have to pick a sub project here. So we can pick per diem, and so it helps out if you're concerned about them not clocking into the correct sub project. It makes it easy to do that on the mobile. I think that's the end of our questions. I really appreciate you joining us today. If you'd like to join us for our next webinar, we will be discussing how to track equipment and get the most out of tracking equipment in busybusy. They're one of your biggest assets on a project, and I like to call it one of the three major components, or the trifecta of managing costs on a project. You got your labor, your cost, or your equipment, and your material. And we've talked about labor today. Next week, we're going to talk about equipment and how to track that equipment. Please, not next week, next month. That is going to be on the 13th of December at 11 a.m. So we would love to have you join us. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you next time.